Hi YouTubers, my name is Sammy. Welcome to my channel. Have you smiled today? Today we're going to talk about social anxiety. Something that's pretty common in society. A lot of people suffer from it, but it's very hard to talk about. So I thought I'd share my experience and maybe help you understand how I overcame it and maybe some tips for you to implement in your own lives. Let me start off by saying I wasn't a socially anxious person growing up. I was the biggest extrovert you could ever find. I could talk to anybody, anywhere, anytime. I was that guy in a party where, I could strike up a conversation and, bond with people, build a rapport. It's probably why I ended up in a career in sales because I was always good at it. I was naturally good at it and I didn't have to think about it twice. But, life events happened. I had general anxiety. That really cascaded into social anxiety for me. I remember when I was laid off, it really affected my confidence. Me as a person being able to interact in any form of manner with other people. So I don't know exactly when it started, but when it did, and when I look back on it, it's pretty amazing how crippling social anxiety can be. And let me give you some examples. Maybe you can relate. For example, when I went to work, I couldn't stay past the meetings. I could only attend the meetings, and even then, I would have to really mentally prepare for it. And it wasn't easy for me to get through. At all times, I felt like somebody was looking at me, somebody was judging me, and I dreaded every interaction. I would think 5 times before I would reach out and grab a snack from the table. When I spoke to people at work, I couldn't make eye contact properly, and I was never able to stand them face to face, and actually have a proper conversation. I would always angle myself a little bit, outward so that I didn't have to face them directly, and somehow my eyes struggled to keep eye contact. So a lot of people looked at that as a sign of maybe lack of confidence or whatever. But honestly, I was just scared that they would find out what's inside of me and that I was really, really uncomfortable at that moment. And that's a huge paranoia, that you carry with you when you're socially anxious. At any point in time, you worry about people finding out what's going on inside of you, which makes it very difficult to interact socially. Um, Let me give you some other examples. I would worry about the random stranger, what they're thinking of me. I would cancel parties. I would bail on my friends. Certain days I couldn't handle anything socially. I would show up to a party, but I could only take it in small doses. Like I would be able to stay a couple of hours and no more. In the middle of a party, I would suddenly start losing my breath. I would run out of breath. And I'm sitting there thinking, there's nothing wrong with this party, nothing wrong with the people around me, and yet I can't breathe for some reason, and I had to leave. So for the longest time, I became this social recluse where I couldn't put myself on social media. I couldn't go to parties. I couldn't hang out with my boss at work and just shoot the shit, let alone suck up. Whew, that never happened. And honestly, it was, when I look back, it's amazing how much it affected my day to day. Um, I couldn't, I couldn't interact with people even on social media. Like if I'm texting somebody, if they don't respond right away, I would think there's something wrong with me. I would think about 5 times before I send a single text. It's insane how granular I got in interacting with people because I thought at any point in time I would be judged. If I thought if my friends found out about my social anxiety, they wouldn't want to be friends with me anymore. And either way, I was afraid all the time. And it wasn't an easy place to be. It was hard to work. It was hard to go to public places. I could be in a restaurant and I'd be looking around and feeling out of breath just because there's lots of people around me. Um, I would go to a movie and I would get anxious just by the proximity of people. It was amazing, and it had nothing to do with who was around me. Sometimes I would get anxious just from being in the company of my own friends or my folks. So looking back at it, it's hard to explaining, but it's essentially a crippling mental, disorder where I just couldn't handle social situations. So if you suffer from that, maybe I have, some tips that might work for you, but let me tell you what I did. A lot of people, a lot of experts actually, um, they talk about in detail about how exposure doesn't really work for people who are socially anxious. Sometimes it could get worse. So by all means, please seek the help of a medical professional, somebody who's an expert on it, and see what really works for you. Whatever works for me may not work for you. um, but this is what I did. Every time there was a party invitation or I had to go somewhere, spend a certain amount of time outside of home, I'm sitting at home feeling sorry for myself, feeling sad that I can't go out and spend time with my friends. Um, so, you know, slowly but surely, I start putting myself out there. Exposure is the way I've conquered my anxiety and social anxiety. So I will I will advocate for it, but it may not be for you. This is how I did it. First, I started putting myself out there for parties or occasions, surrounded by friends and close ones, people who love me and people who I love and I trust, with my mental health, with my well being. It was a little bit easier than being surrounded by strangers. You know what I mean? So I started with that, but at the same time, I did two things that was really critical for my self care. Number one, I did that in doses. I didn't do it all the time. And even when I did it 1 hour at a time, 2 hours at a time, until I got to a point where I could actually last a whole party. And even now, I gotta tell you, it's rare. It's rare for me to show up at a party at 7 or any get together, any invitation, doesn't matter. The honest truth is, my friends, if you're watching this, I can't stay too long because sooner or later I will run out of breath. So I would do it a couple of hours at a time, but I would do it over and over again. The repetition itself is part of recovery. It rewires our brain. It keeps telling our brain that it's okay. Number two, rewiring our brain is essential to overcoming anxiety. It can be done in various ways, but if you're taking charge of your own anxiety, if you're taking charge of your own mental health, this is how I would recommend it. Um, Journal every time. You go to a party, you come back, you journal your successes, you pat yourself on the back, and you understand, you accept that you just put yourself out there. Like, you really should feel like a badass for doing that because this shit isn't easy. This shit is really crippling. You, for you to go out there while having social anxiety is a big deal. So if you do conquer that, by all means, you should pat yourself on the back. You should be very proud. And you have to journal it and wake up the following morning and read it. All your successes from the night before. Whatever the social scenario was, it doesn't matter. What matters is that A, you take it at your own dose. Nobody can tell you, or nobody should, what works for you and how long you can stay, how long you can handle this. It's really critical that you listen to yourself and your soul, your spirit will talk to you and say, hey, it's just getting to that overwhelming point. I think you should go. Listen to that. And number two, when you read up on that the following day, you realize that you've accomplished something, that you're making progress. And when you do this over and over again, what happens is that your brain starts to believe that you're actually capable of doing this. It stops creating this paranoia, this fear that totally cripples you. And it starts believing that you can actually go out and interact with people normally. Mind you, it's not going to be easy, and it's you're going to say the wrong things. I did. I said a whole lot of, I don't know what I said, but honestly, I said a whole lot of weird things. I lost friends, I lost jobs. Like, oh, when I look back, I was just being myself. I have nothing to apologize for. But making mistakes and not being perfect through the process is part of the process. And you have to accept that. Um, the next point I want to talk to you about is who you should start with. You start with the people you love and trust. Then you move on to maybe other work gatherings that you couldn't handle before, or family functions who stress you out. What you should not do is expose yourself to triggers that will overwhelm you. That's really critical. Um, Take all the time you need, take all the space you need. Even at a party, step out for a few minutes, take a breath, slow it down, slow your thought process down, and just give yourself those little pockets of space that enables you to recover, even while you're at the event. Um, Once you start getting out there and your brain starts to believe the unbelievable, you will see that it's amazing how you can literally rewire your brain. It's not easy, um, but I recommend going out there. I recommend starting slow, but doing something that you love. When you do that, um, it's part of your self care, right? To do things you love, to do things you enjoy, that's good for you. You should do that anyway. When, when you pick the people that you're going to do it with, that's part of self care. When you surround yourself with positive friends, supportive people, that's self care too. So you're essentially practicing self care at a dose that's manageable by you over and over again. And that's how the brain starts creating and starts believing and then starts accepting that you are perfectly capable of handling these social situations. The irrational fear starts to go away and you start becoming more and more comfortable. This is not going to happen in a week. This is not going to happen in maybe even a month, or it might even take years. But I got to tell you, it is so worth it. Do you really want to stay at home feeling sorry for yourself? Or do you want to go out there and do you want to make friends? Do you want to be yourself and be surrounded by people who know who you are, believe in who you are, and love you for who you are? How do you really want the rest of your life to go? Do you want this anxiety to cripple you, or do you want to take charge and actually do something about it? That would be my challenge. I pushed myself. I don't know if it's recommended. I don't know if my, therapist or whoever would suggest it, but I threw myself out there and I did it over and over again. I made mistakes and I took it in stride. I didn't criticize myself for the mistakes I made because it's part of the process. I patted myself on the back and guess what? I'm immensely proud for how I did it. And so should you be. You, once you step out your comfort zone, and it is everything you want is on the other side of fear. Everything you're trying to conquer is going to be by doing things that you're not comfortable with. But you get to make that call. You get to decide exactly when, how much. That's manageable by you, and that goes on a daily basis. This self-caring journey, it has to be at, this is really important, so pay attention. It has to be at a moment by moment, breath by breath, interaction by interaction basis. One interaction at a time, one breath at a time, one day at a time, you're going to conquer this. Not any faster than that. So, Just remember, when you fight this hard to improve, you essentially practice the same mindsets of warriors. All the warriors that you see in movies and you know from history, that's who you are. To conquer your own mind is the biggest challenge that a warrior goes through. And so are you. So feel like a badass. Feel like you can do anything. Once you make some progress, the encouragement, the motivation will come back. It will drive you forward. You don't have to stay lonely forever. You don't have to stay isolated forever. You can take charge. This may not be your way, but you can overcome this. My next video will be about making friends while having anxiety. So, if you want to see more videos like this, please click the subscribe button. Like the video, leave me your comments, give me feedback as to what you would like to see. And until next time, love, peace, respect. Namaste.